If you take care of your people, everything else is going to be taken care of. You're going to always win because, if you treat your team and your employees or whatever the way that you want them to treat your customers or your clients and, your
Hmm.
guests, then that's what they're going to do. And then you're going to get more customers, more guests. Everybody's going to make more money. They can get better raises. You can hire more people. It all pans out by just taking care of your people, treating them with that care and respect, and making them feel valued and appreciated, understand their roles and how they fit in the team and why they're so important to the team, and embracing everybody.
Hello, welcome to the Healthy Wealth Experience with your hosts, me, Chris Hall. And today I'm excited to have a very well-known author, Gladys DeClouet. And she is a retired C-suite executive, and she has a book that came out in September. I'm really excited to talk about the different things that she did to forge her way through business as a trailblazing Black woman. So Gladys, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Chris, for having me.
Yeah, of course.
I'm excited to be here and share what I can with your audience today.
That's great. So I went over, your CV and basically said you went to Tuskegee for university, and then you got your MBA at Wisconsin. But your degree at Tuskegee was engineering, but then you went and got an MBA. Can you tell me a little bit about like how you went from engineering as a main degree to an MBA?
Yes. Well, I majored in engineering at Tuskegee because that was, my undergrad straight out of high school. And in high school, my whole life, I'd always been, just really good in the math, the sciences, and that kind of stuff. And I'd taken all the college prep courses, like all the physics and chemistry and trigonometries and all that stuff. So when it was time to graduate, and I graduated as valedictorian, the counselors and the principal, everybody kind of was really interested in helping to give me some guidance about what to do. And so everyone really encouraged me that given I had the aptitude to be a good engineer, that I should go and major in engineering. And at that time, this was in the uh, engineering was in high demand and they were paying really well. And so I was encouraged to take that path. So I took a scholarship and went to college and majored in mechanical engineering. And that degree and that major took me, to the oil industry. Because at that time when I came out in 1979, we were amidst the United States or the world, the big oil boom. And so there was a lot of demand in the oil industry, and they were really looking for engineers. They were paying well and offering great careers. And so it took me in that direction, and which was the beginning of something that was truly pioneering and revolutionary. That's how I ended up being the first female in offshore oil and gas exploration and production. And of course, that was like, a whole new world, not just for me, but for everyone experiencing me in their world, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but as I entered that, and I'm sure we'll probably come back to talk about that a little more, but in that world, I was fully capable and I did enjoy all of the technical aspects and, being an engineer and designing offshore facilities and drilling plans and all these sorts of things. It was great. But what I really discovered and saw was that my passion was still more around all of the economics and the financial side of the business. And that's what I enjoyed the most about what I was doing, was really doing all of the economic feasibility analysis and determining how to most economically produce a whole oil field, or how many oil wells should we drill, those sorts of things. So anyway, I really decided after doing that for 5 years that, it was time for me to really start to pursue what I wanted to do, which is something more financial. And so I took an opportunity that came about, and which is when they were relocating our entire division. Not just me, but the whole division was being moved to a different city. And so that presented this opportunity where they bought my house, and it was like the perfect time to say, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm going to go back to school full time. I'm going to get my MBA. And so I majored in finance and investment banking. in Wisconsin. And when I got out of MBA school, though, I did go back to the oil industry, which originally I was thinking something different, but then it really made sense, by the time I got to toward graduation, because I was an experienced engineer, an experienced oil person who now had an MBA. So I was really valuable to the oil industry as
Absolutely.
opposed to me just being another brand new MBA going to Wall Street or something.
Mhm.
So I ended up going back to the oil industry, but this time I didn't go back upstream in exploration and production. I went to the downstream side of the oil industry when I joined Standard Oil, which became BP. But that side of the industry is kind of where it takes you closer and closer and closer to the consumer, starting into refinery supply and transportation, distribution, and on until I moved down the chain in aviation, moved down the chain until I ended up in retail. Running the retail operations
Okay.
there.
So when you were working for BP, did you actually work on the rigs, or did you kind of just go out and visit rigs? Like, did you have to stay out there? Because I know that in that industry, like, people will do like 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. They'll stay on the rig for 2 weeks and then they'll come off for 2 weeks. Is that something you had to do, or were you more of like, hey, I'm going to go in, work on some stuff, and then get back out?
Okay. First, I should clear up. When I was an engineer, I was not working for BP. I went to work for Conoco first.
Okay.
So I was working for Conoco, and my office was in Lake Charles, Louisiana. That's where
Yeah.
the division office was. So it was kind of as you're describing. I had a normal business office downtown in the tower with the rest of the professionals and other engineers. But the work that I did was out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
So I went to the office at times, but then I was out in the field a lot. And I went out to the field by helicopter because Gladys didn't like boats. So I did all of my trips by helicopter
Yeah.
out to the field. Yeah. So I had to go back and forth, and it depends on what's going on, and even on the ground. Like, for instance, when I was in production engineering, I actually had the opportunity to design. First, I did the design for two brand new platforms that were going offshore, to design all the production facilities that were going to go on the platform. So then I had to go in the construction yards on land out of New Orleans on the South Bank there, the West Bank, I'm sorry, and supervise the construction in the construction yards to, prefab and pre-put all this stuff on the platforms. And we put them on a big barge, you ship it out to sea, and we go out there, and then you take these giant, cranes on derrick barges, and you set the platform in the ocean with the stuff on it. And now you got to finish all the final hookups and weldings and getting all this stuff. I had to be out there for all that stuff. And then when I became a reservoir engineer, obviously I had to be out there on the drilling rigs then, and for the actual drilling, to be sure we were doing things safely and dealing anticipating the right pressures and not having blowouts and killing people and that kind of thing. So yeah, so I had to spend a lot of time out on out on the rigs or on the platforms then. And you're right, that world was an interesting one because you had people who worked some could, on production platforms, they may work 7 and 7, or maybe 14 and 14. On drilling rigs, you had people working 30 and 30.
Oh,
And some people even longer than 30 days, on the derrick barges and things like that. So the environment, having this young female show up in that world where they did not have bathroom or sleeping facilities for women yet.
you beat me to it. That was going to be one of my questions.
Yes. So that was a very interesting world. And these men, they hadn't been around their women or their families for long periods of time. And they weren't shy about just being totally out of line. Sexual harassment off the charts.
Oh my gosh.
It was very interesting. So like I said, without the sleeping quarters out there for me, it was on a production platform, they may have quarters for 4 people in the quarters. But if I showed up, obviously they didn't have one for me. So 3 other men couldn't sleep in one of the quarters if I showed up. And so that added to the resentment that was already out there in the first place, the tension level for that. And then if I was on a drilling rig, they're just that environment. That's when I say people out there 30 and 30 and what have you. That environment was so tough that if I had to stay out there overnight, which I had to do, I literally slept in my fully clothed in a chair sitting in the foreman's office because I wasn't willing. It just wasn't
Yeah.
safe for me to do otherwise.
Yeah, you were going to put yourself in that situation. Smart.
Right.
Yeah.
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 So I sat, I slept in the chair in the foreman's office.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And that's how I had to handle that whole situation. Yeah, those are some interesting days, but for sure. And not just a sexual harassment. They really, you have to appreciate the environment and where I was. I'm in Louisiana and Texas,
Mm-hmm.
southern part of the United States. At a time, and I started actually went out there first in 1978. And they would just tell me to my face, just point blank, I should be home barefoot and pregnant and to get
Mm.
my tight blank off the rig. And just, and those are some of the nicer things that they would say to me. Yeah. And it was constant, every moment of every day, just proving myself over and over and over that I have the right to be here. I've earned the right to be here. I know what I'm doing. Just let me do my job and and that's sort of how things went. And everything was a challenge. I even wrote in the book about one incident where the guy literally just, when he saw that I was the person in charge of the project, he literally just spit his tobacco on my feet, just right on my boots. This is like,
It's a sign of just massive disrespect.
yeah, right. The whole point was always to be as disrespectful and as difficult as possible to try and really get me to say, I think I should leave. I'm gonna throw in the towel. This is just too much. And but they had the wrong person for that because I'm like, the worse you behave, the more I was going. I was determined to prove to you that I was going to make it, and I was not going to let you run me off.
Where do you think that fortitude came from? Like for you, like how did you grow up to where that's something you're like, I'll take this challenge and I'll meet it?
I don't know. I guess it's just the me I've always known. I don't know. I've never run from a challenge. It's like, everything is difficult, life is difficult and tough. And so, you just have to
What did your parents do for a living?
you have to step up to. Well, that was also part of my journey. I didn't my biological father died when I was too young to even know who he was. I was a baby. My mother and later my stepfather. She was a dental assistant, well, a hygienist in a dental office, at her best point, when her life was at its best point. And my stepfather was a salesman. He was an appliance salesman. They both worked second jobs and things and cleaned up at night, dairy queens and things, trying to provide for the big family and that kind of thing. So came from, I guess, definitely a strong work ethic family, a church going family, yeah, just a believer in faith and things are, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. You just grew up just like give me the challenge, I'll take it on.
Yeah, yeah. I continued in my life and, and I share a lot of that in the book. Just, it just comes to challenge after challenge after challenge. So resilience is sort of one of the key messages in that book for me. It is about resilience. Matter of fact, that is why I named the title of the book A Layered Life. And that is because, life is layered. It is not all good and then not, it's not all bad, but you're gonna get it all of it, right? It's gonna weave together the good and the bad and you just can't separate the two. And when you're at some great highs, you're gonna get hit with some deep things. And in my life, I certainly lived through the loss of so many close loved ones in my life, and at times when things are tough, the spouse, getting cancer and dying. It's just there were just a lot of things in life, and one of my big messages in my book though is that and I guess I'm a believer in this. I am a believer in this, and that is that life is layered, and we're going to have all these challenges, but we can take those challenges and use them as stepping stones for growth and development, and for toward purpose and legacy, and learn what we can and let it build character for us. Let it teach us lessons, and a lesson can be something very positive that you learn, and it's something you want to build upon and repeat in life. Or a lesson can simply be that this is the way I don't want to be. And I learned so many lessons, particularly, in my early oil industry days and stuff. And those lessons were that, I I this is not the type of leader I am going to be, right? In certain situations where uh, I wasn't, the leaders abdicated their responsibility to really look out and protect me and those sorts of things. I said, I would not be a leader who abdicated my responsibility. I would, I'm going to stand up for my employees. I'm going to make the tough calls and not hide behind people.
Hmm.
Ensure everybody can work and contribute and try to succeed free of racism and sexism and sexual harassment, those kinds of things. Or that I'm not going to treat people a lot of the ways that I was treated. I'm going to make people feel valued, make them feel appreciated, and get a lot more out of them as a team and get a much stronger, higher performing team by treating people the right way, those
Right.
sorts of things. So, even when you go through tough times, my thing is you look for what can you learn in that situation that you can use and help move you forward, in a positive way.
Right. No, I love that. I coach football, and when I was playing football, I definitely had all different kinds of coaches, but I remember the coaches that I disliked the most were the ones that like yelled and screamed at me all the time. And so when I became a coach, I think in my early years I sort of modeled that a little bit because that's kind of what I knew. But then as I realized like I didn't like being yelled at, so why am I yelling at people? So I kind of like just transitioned over time to like where, I mean, I'll raise my voice, but it's mostly just to be heard because when you're on a football field with 50 people all over the place, you kind of have to sometimes raise your voice. But I think what I'm hearing is like I took what came at me and I went, I don't want to be like that either. And I feel like I've had a couple conversations on the podcast about leadership, and what I'm hearing from you is the difference between you've had transactional type leaders in your life, and now you are more of a transformational leader. Like you're gonna do your best for your people, and in return they'll be the best employees they can be, which I think is really
Right.
cool.
Yeah. That is definitely my philosophy. If you take care of your people, everything else is going to be taken care of. You're going to always win because, if you treat your team and your employees or whatever the way that you want them to treat your customers or your clients and, your
Hmm.
guests, then that's what they're going to do. And then you're going to get more customers, more guests. Everybody's going to make more money. They can get better raises. You can hire more people. It all pans out by just taking care of your people, treating them with that care and respect, and making them feel valued and appreciated, understand their roles and how they fit in the team and why they're so important to the team, and embracing everybody, on the team and their ideas and their inputs. And, you know, so a lot of what I would say a lot of the adversity that I went through in my life, it it developed me into a person who really, I I value inclusive leadership. I value diversity of thought, people, all experiences, and really build leadership on that mutual respect and trust, um, and integrity. That's kind of the key because I think, you know, you have to earn your leadership position. You got to earn that respect. And you do that, I think, by demonstrating and showing that unwavering integrity and that active compassion for people and, and consistent performance that they can count on you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. No, I love that. When you got your MBA and you went back, you said you worked for Standard Oil, which then became BP. What was your job title there when you first got to Standard Oil?
my first job out of grad school was I was a planning analyst in crude oil trading and transportation. And I really had a wonderful set of experiences at BP because I got to do a variety of functional roles as well as in different parts of the business and learn the whole business. So yeah, so my first job was like I said, planning analyst in crude oil trading and transportation. And then I got to become a business development specialist in the lower 48 pipelines. Then I was a financial controller for the Alaskan pipeline. Then I became a manager of planning for our international aviation fuels business. And then I got to be a region manager of terminals and distribution, running the facility, where we store all of the petroleum products, um, and then distribute them out uh, to all of the consumers and gas stations. Those uh, 18-wheeler trucks you see out there with 9,000 gallons of product on a truck at a time, managing and running those fleets, and as well as the facilities, the storage facilities, and things you see when you pass through an oil town or cities where you find all the petroleum products stored. And then I ultimately moved on to what I called, back then the ultimate glass ceiling breaking position, because back then we talked a lot about that invisible barrier for women, and that
Mhm.
invisible barrier for people of color. And I finally got to break that one, which was being a C-suite position, and not just an entry level C-suite, but a nice C-suite position, but also in an actual line operating role where I was responsible for, your top line sales and the expenses and the bottom line profit of an entire business
Mhm.
division. I was the Cleveland division manager position at BP. And so that was my final position in the oil industry before
Can you
I got recruited into the restaurant industry.
can you let people know what a C-suite executive is in case they don't know?
It is, wow, so fun you use a term so often you don't know how to stop and explain it. It is it's reaching a certain level in corporate America where you're not in middle management, or certain kind of management. You're in a what they call an executive level in the company where you are truly of a significant responsibility level in that company and part of the leadership, part of the upper leadership of that company.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. And so when you became a C-suite executive, about how long were you doing that before you got recruited away?
3 years.
Okay. Yeah, and it's funny. That was one of my questions I was going to ask as well. Is like, how did you go from oil to food? And it's like it had to be recruiting. It had to be somebody was like, this lady, we got to get her over here.
Yeah, I was approached by a recruiter, and that's one of those kind of interesting stories because I was approached by recruiters all the time, and I was always saying, "Oh, my career is doing great. I'm not interested." And they say timing is everything. And this person called me in the middle of winter, and I'm living in Cleveland, Ohio, on a dreary, dark day and says that I have this company in San Diego, California, who would like to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not interested. She's like, just think about it. Why pass up a trip just to go visit in, beautiful sunny San Diego right now?
Right.
You should at least go talk to the people, right? And my husband said the same thing. He was like, no, go down there and at least talk to them. Yeah, absolutely. And matter of fact, he had been kind of really for years kind of pushing to say, can't we find something in Southern California? But
Nice.
yeah, it was really interesting. But it was so expensive to live in Southern California, and you needed to have all the right circumstances, the right salary, the right offer, the right whatever. And, and totally it came along and everything was right about it. And, you could maintain your lifestyle and such. And, the offer was really great. And I ended up moving there. But actually, there was some logic, though, in case you're, I mean, there was some logic, I think, to how I got on the radar of them. And that is when I was telling you about that last position I was in as a division manager, and I was responsible for all channels of trade. Well, obviously, one of the biggest channels of trade is retail. So that means the gas stations, which meant convenience stores. And this was the, early 90s, well, mid 90s. And so BP were, one of the companies or the company leading the way at that time for what's now the norm. But back then it was a big deal in actually rolling out for the first time these huge convenience stores where we had fresh food and bakeries and delis and that kind of stuff in these large square foot convenience stores. We'll call them BP Express back then. And we rolled it out in my division. That was our first rollout in the company. And then we were just doing so well with it until next thing you know, we were doing co-branded deals with McDonald's and Burger Kings in our convenience stores.
Right.
And so this is just a guess on my part,
So
but
you're the one that did
maybe
that.
somewhere
All
in
right.
there is how
Yeah.
I end up.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You were basically working in convenience food. So
Right,
and plus
right,
your
right.
your name was probably being, tossed around because like you're working with co-branding deals with McDonald's and Burger King. So yeah, that's makes perfect
So
sense.
I would imagine that that's kind of how it happened. Even though our worlds are kind of really different, and I know when I went to Jack in the Box, they had never had anyone. They were a company that was truly about history. People there worked there, lived their whole careers there. They didn't hire from outside of that industry or outside of that company, and so I was like this really strange person for them at first. And I know when I went down for an interview, my would-be boss was saying to me, he said, so, I mean, would you be comfortable? What do you think you can make that transition, from oil to, this to the big money oil business to the small margin type of a restaurant business, and we're just so different. And, and I shared with him, I said, but in actuality, it's not really that different. You know, it's running the business is the same thing. I said, I'm going to achieve my goals here through people and through people, processes, and procedures. The same thing in the oil industry, the same thing in the food industry. I said, my right now today, say my product happens to be gasoline and Twinkies, and yours is hamburgers and fries. But it's still the people that I'm going to get the work done through. And so if you know how to lead and manage people and you understand business and the economics and finance of business, it's the same thing, and I could see that little light bulb would go off in him, and he was like, she's absolutely right. I think this deal is
Yeah, that's fun. And then what did you do for Jack in the Box? Like what was your title there?
when I went to Jack in the Box, my first position there was the regional vice president for the Los Angeles region. That was their big prolific, their largest region. And then I quickly got promoted up and became vice president of operations at Jack in the Box.
Okay. Wow.
And then I later went to Burger King, got recruited by Burger King into Miami. That's what finally brought me back in my life back to Florida, because I was born in northern Florida, but I hadn't been back to Florida since high school.
Is that where Burger King's headquarters in Florida?
Yes, in Miami.
Okay. Okay. And then after you retired, you decided to stick around?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, that's great.
I am just a nice hot weather, tropical weather person. I love tropical weather. And if you're going to live in the United States and live in tropical weather, you're going to be in South Florida. So once I was here, I think it was impossible to get me out of South Florida again.
Right. So when you were at Jack in the Box, was there more challenges with the diversity, issues like that, or was Jack in the Box fairly diversified when you got there?
It was the culture at Jack in the Box was, I would say, was definitely less British culture was more, it felt like more of a family, a little more comfortable type of a culture at Jack in the Box. 'Cause it also was a smaller company. I mean, it was still a multi-billion-dollar company, but at the time, the BP I was coming from back in 1998 was, like, you know, $500 billion type company. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It wasn't so bureaucratic. Yes, that's what I liked about Jack in the Box. There was less bureaucracy
Mm.
and a little bit more informalness to the culture at Jack in the Box compared to coming from BP. But the challenges that I faced when I got to Jack in the Box were, which is why they had been looking this position when they brought me in as the regional vice president of Los Angeles. They had been trying to fill that position for 2 years, but they just hadn't found the right person, they said. And the thing about it was really a great, I guess, kind of like perfect opportunity, meeting the right person. Um, in terms of leadership style and taking things to the next level. Because it was a different challenge than say later I tell you about, I mean, like at Burger King. They had Los Angeles region had the experience. They had people and they had restaurant managers and above restaurant leaders, people with tons of experience, but they weren't engaged or motivated. And, so when they brought me on, I had everybody at headquarters and human resources and and my boss and everybody saying, you're going to have to go in there and just clear out all this dead wood and, to try to bring on a new leadership team and region, blah, 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 blah. And it turned out that was not what I did when I went in there. And we went I was only in that job for 18 months. And in 18 months time, we not only rolled out, we grew 60% new restaurants on the ground in the region. The
Wow.
sales went up double digits. The team was so reinvigorated and re-energized, and I didn't get rid of any of these key people they were talking about. That was, to me, that was just crazy to let that kind of knowledge and experience go. Instead, what I, got to know each person. When I first came in, I did this whole onboarding thing. But anyway, I talked to each person and tried to understand, what did they see as opportunities? How could I help them? What was the problems? This and that. And by the time I got it all figured out, what I realized is that people just they needed some appreciation for all the value they brought and the things that they had done. They needed to be re-energized and given new opportunities. I put people into new stretch assignments and into new roles and rolled out new, big projects, new, to help the system, the whole company system, rolled out some new programs and things, put these people in charge. People they're saying, oh, they're just so whatever they need to go. Those people just hadn't been challenged in a long
Mm.
time. They hadn't been given something exciting to do. They didn't have someone who had believed in them in a while. Those kinds of things. So someone who'd actually involve them in the process of things, involve them in decisions, involve them in leading things, and uh, those kind of things. And we had a lot that we were trying to get done, man, in a short period of time. And, and I called on I went to the people who were there and gave them the opportunity, and they didn't let me down, man. We went
Mm.
to top performing in everything on the report card. We were top performers in, the profits, the sales, everything is all of that as well, and all the new brand reinvention we were rolling out and all these things. But it was just about having a different style
Mm.
of leadership and learn and knowing how to engage with people on the level of what connects with them, what it is they needed as individuals. Everybody doesn't need the same thing, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now you were with them for 18 months, you said?
no, I said I was in that first role for
Got it.
18 months.
Okay. Okay,
And
got it.
then, and then when I got promoted up, of course, I replaced myself in that position because that position was going to be reporting to me with someone else that I knew would maintain that same teamwork culture that I had created. That was probably a good word, but really created a team culture there, one where everybody, because you say, how can you roll out, how can you build in 18 months' time, throw another 72 restaurants on the ground in the same place where you already have these other ones? And not only do you make all the money on the new ones, but even the existing ones, instead of being cannibalized and sales stealing from them, instead they even went up double digits and whatever. How do you do that? How do you get all the people to supply and run these restaurants? You do that by all of these other people working together as a team, right? Each restaurant is out there supporting another restaurant. They're grooming and building the people for the next guy. And they're, all these, that type of a teamwork atmosphere. And when they see someone struggling, before you'd see someone struggle, you just kind of look and laugh and say, oh, but now we're in an environment and they saw someone struggle. The guy next door was raising his hand. How can I help you? We're
Mhm.
here. I'm going to send my people over. That kind of a
That's so cool.
environment.
That is such a neat story because I think that gets lost in corporate culture. I think you know what I mean. Like I worked for another finance company for quite a while, and one of the things that was really neat about them was that when they brought somebody new in, there would almost be like a bunch of people who had been doing it for 5, 10, 15 years who would be like, hey, when you have a question, call me. You know what I mean? You're going to have questions, call me. And just having that support system, again, not having, as an employee, you don't want to call the 1-800 number and talk to somebody in HR. You want to talk to somebody like that's doing what you're doing.
Right,
So I love
right.
that. That's really cool that you built that culture for them.
Yeah. And
Still extremely rare. I think even now it's still extremely rare to have a corporate culture that is like, let's help everybody get better. Rising tide floats all boats.
yeah, yeah. And it was interesting. I even created a new level of position in the company to help people move up in the organization to be able to take on more responsibility. Because another problem, and as I said, as I stayed with Jack in the Box, I guess almost 10 years, 9 years, and so I got to do a lot of things as the vice president of operations. And, one of the things you struggling is, you reach that point, the way the company was structured, where you have people who are really, really good at their level. I say maybe at an area they're really good. I'll use the example at a restaurant manager level, a general manager level, but they don't have the experience and they're not capable to jump to an area manager level where, say, they run 20 restaurants. They don't know how to go from one restaurant to 20 restaurants at one time
Hmm.
without failing. It's that type of a scenario. So, created some development positions for people to fill a pipeline where you gave them 6 to 8 and let them get their feet, let them learn, understand what they're doing, then move them up to take on more, or sign them to work with a senior person who could help develop them and teach them and coach them and
Yeah.
that kind of a thing. And it helped just to and expanding the diversity of things helped because in that world, the restaurant world is one of the most diverse worlds you're going to find in terms of one, the consumers you're serving as customers, and then the people who are working in that industry. And yet we weren't having the success at all in the diversity of people moving up in the company.
Mm.
And that would create a lot of bad morale for people, or people not being as committed to the company and giving all that they could because, they didn't see these things happening.
Hmm.
And by doing things like creating development positions to help people be able to transition successfully from one level to the other was something that was, like say, of a great benefit. And then they could see that change and see people succeeding or just opening up, just changing some of the norms of how we did things. We always had people tested by psychologists to, people's intellectual level and their personality, whatever. Are they capable of being leaders of certain levels in the company? And one of the issues with that was we had a lot of people, English was a second language. And these people did not do well on those kinds of tests. But yet I'm watching them on the ground run circles around people.
Mhm.
But they couldn't, when you send them to the doc, as they call them, you send them to the doc, they didn't score well.
Mm.
And it's like at some point you have to say, am I just going to continue to accept that none of these people are good enough when you're watching what they're doing on the ground because we have this one test that we're saying, oops, but they're not scoring well on it. And so I took a couple of chances with that, and with people that I know, I'm seeing what they can do, and man, opened the door and they just blew the world away. What? And right now, one of those guys, one of the guys, the first one that I did that with, not only did he go on to move up, area manager rank, director rank, he went on to become a franchisee and is like the largest franchisee they have with hundreds and hundreds of restaurants and stuff,
I love it.
but you just have to be willing to do some things a little differently than we've just always done,
Yeah. I'm
This is
so
what we don't.
grateful that you built an entire culture of advocating for people and that you were able to, I mean, in essence, really, you changed that man's life. So, you can imagine that if you didn't have someone advocating for him, that he might still just be a general manager at one store. And,
Right.
and now
And
he
just
has,
because
yeah,
you
because
know,
you believed in him, because you saw what he was doing, you advocated for him. He got to move up, and now he's uberly successful. And in my hopes, my guess is because he had you, that he's that same person for other people, and he's
right.
advocating for
And yes,
them.
hopefully so. Hopefully and I'm sure he is, paying that forward. And he wasn't the only person. There were several other people and women and things, One woman had been with the company 30 years and totally overlooked, and then she ended up being senior vice president in the company. So it's yeah.
I think it's cool, obviously, definitely want to talk about your book too. What I think is cool about your story that I'm kind of like getting from this is like you broke barriers, which is very cool in its own right. That's all. I mean, that in its own dynamic is really cool. But like you didn't just do it for yourself. Like you literally were like, no, I'm gonna like reach down and pull people up with me. And I think that's the real beauty of your story, is that you have you took your licks and then you used it so that you could like help other people move up without taking their licks. And I think that's a really neat story that's unraveled here today. So, but
I
tell
yeah,
me, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just say I did have a couple of mentors in my life when I was at BP, and I really appreciated the things they taught me and the things they did for me. And yeah, and so as soon as I began to get in leadership positions and what have you, I very much wanted to do just what you were saying. I wanted to do for others what I felt they did for me, and to continue that. And I still to this day, even retirement, I still try to coach and mentor and help develop people, to enhance opportunities for them.
That's great. So what made you decide to write a book?
I think a layered life it's an inspirational story of resilience, courage, faith, and leadership. And it recounts my personal as well as professional. Because most people, I started out trying to do professional and discovered you just can't separate the world. So it recounts my personal and professional experiences from being born into desegregation, before women's rights movements in the deep South, resources were few, and moving on to become that first female engineer offshore, and then moving on through leadership in a couple of industries. But what adds a lot of value to the book is that it's an extraordinary journey, really, just through the complexity of race, gender, ambition, personal loss. And it's not just marked by hardship. it it includes joy, self-belief, and as you pointed out, that unwavering commitment to try to help other people succeed. And I think what it does is it gets people to reflect on their own life. You begin to reflect on your own values. You begin to reflect on the impact that you're making on the world around you through reading my story. So it was my hope in writing the story that to try to inspire and empower some future leaders and all people, and but particularly people who may feel unseen or underestimated, and to allow as many people, because I've always tried to mentor, but you can only touch so many people. So I was hoping maybe a book would allow as many people as possible, or many more people, to actually benefit from my lifetime of lessons learned, right? And hardships endured, and great experiences. And also, I must admit, one of the motivations for me was to allow girls, women, anybody who want to travel a path a new path, that to know someone who's traveled that path before them and know how I dealt with some of the challenges and sacrifices that it's going to take if they're going to do that. And lastly, spark, frankly, some meaningful conversation around resilience, inclusive leadership, value of diversity, mental and physical well-being, which is something very important to me in life, and just life balance. Because sometimes I think that just gets lost in our massive pursuit of success and career.
I'm so grateful that you mentioned balance, because one of the reasons I call this the healthy wealth experience is because I feel the same way that you do. I feel like people pursue wealth and success and admiration and, goals and stuff like that. And then it's usually one of those situations where, like, not usually, but it can be where people pursue it so hard that they forget about their health, and then they get to this point where they've got this money but they don't actually have like a quality of life to go with it. What did you do personally to kind of like make sure that you stayed as healthy as you could in these situations?
Yeah, I was really serious about the trying to maintain my health, because I mentioned to you, I've lost a lot of loved ones, and I have a family history that was just not good, of people not making it out of their 40s. Right. My mother's siblings didn't make it out their 40s. I had four siblings didn't make it out their 40s, and so I was really kind of serious about my taking care of my health, and I I had to find the thing is consistency. Okay. You have to be consistent, and have some discipline. So I had to find what worked, find time in my day and schedule that it could work for me to commit to going to my workouts, right? And I guess I've always been, I grew up a cheerleader, right? I was a cheerleader, young, high school, college, that kind of thing. And I've never stopped working out. But so I tend to do the gym as my thing, Yeah. So I'm kind of a gym person. And, there were times when I did it at lunch in my career when it could work for me to do it at lunch. There were times when, before I had children, I could do it after work. That worked for me. But then, there reached times that as a mother with children, and then as I had reached these executive levels and I was, traveling, the demands were really tough. And so became my pattern, which was so unlike me because my natural body clock is not this, but my pattern became I had to get up and do it before anybody else in my house was ever awake.
Mhm.
So, Gladys was up, rolled out of bed, and just rolled straight into her gym clothes and did her thing at about 5:30 in the morning so that I can get back, shower, and get on with my day.
Mhm.
And I did that, yeah, up until I retired. And even when I'm traveling on the road, the first thing I put in my suitcase are those gym shoes and those gym clothes. And even in the hotel, I roll out of bed, I go down to that gym, get dressed. I mean, do my thing, and then come back and get dressed and show up for whatever the meeting I have to
Mhm.
be at or whatever I'm doing. And I stay consistent with that, and eating, to always trying to try to eat right and all that stuff. Work really hard to keep the weight within a certain, band,
Mhm. Yeah.
because you go through, we have periods where you may be overindulged a little bit, but I've always kept, believe in if I can keep everything within that 3 or 4 pounds, then I can always deal with it. If I let it get outside of that, now I have this massive issue to deal with. So
Right. Right.
yes, stuff like that. And then mental health. That's the thing that I've always tried to get people to understand. And believe it or not, I have impacted so many people who have become marathon runners, who have lost 1.5 times their size and all kinds of things like this because they watch me and listen to the things that I would say and I would do. But I believe if people would just commit and start doing it, what you discover is this: it helps your mind so much. It helps clears that your mental state. It prepares that mental state for the day before you get into that circus of a
Right.
business day,
Right.
and you feel good. And when you don't do it, you feel bad. You know what I'm saying? If you can get yourself to the point of feeling like, man, if I don't do this, I don't feel good, then you're in the right place. You see the positiveness in what you're doing.
I think the points that I took out of that I thought were really cool was like discipline is always going to beat motivation. You know what I mean? Like you made it a practice to get it in. Wherever you need to get it in, however you need to adjust your schedule, you got it in. And I feel like discipline outlasts motivation so long, because like we're going into the holidays, so usually typically people will overindulge a little bit, and then first of the year is the big kick to get back to the gym and stuff like that. But that's motivation, that we're trying to like ramp off of motivation and just never lasts. And that's why if you go to the gym in February, it's the same size as it was in November.
Right,
All
right,
all
right.
those motivated people are, back to their old habits. So I love the discipline side of that. That was really good. And then the second part was I think that you're on to something with the idea that if you do take care of your physical health, it really leads to your mental health. It really leads to like being able to persevere in the situations that you've been in, you know what I mean? Because like, having that mental, when you work out, your blood pumps and your blood pumps into your brain and it makes you smarter and it makes you more mentally agile and stuff like that. So I think that's important to note as well, is that, when you're facing adversity, if you've got your workout in, it's way easier to face that adversity. So I love that.
You need stamina, to be honest. Executive life requires stamina.
Mhm.
And so, being in good physical and mental shape helps you with that stamina.
I love that. I love that. Very cool. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you would like to talk about?
Oh yeah, you're right. We did not get into Burger King, but it was, very similar to the life at Jack in the Box. Yeah. Just at an even higher level. I was on the global executive team there at Burger King, and obviously a much bigger global company,
Right.
but it was about the same. I think gave it time. And we touched on integrity a little bit because that is also one just my key messages for people, and particularly young people, because I hope to help and inspire people who are entering this whole work world and professional world, and people who are trying to climb the ladder. And in today's world, I just think they see so much of the wrong things.
Hmm.
They see so many examples of, the dishonesty, unethical behaviors, and all sorts of things. And that, you know, you can win. You can lead and you can win with integrity. You don't have to be a dishonest person, be unethical, and climb over other people and stab other people in the back to succeed. But yeah, it is, and it's from the book, and obviously because it's my belief and from my life, and that is, I always say first and foremost, live and win with integrity. Secondly, life is layered, and use every challenge as a stepping stone. And then um, leadership should be inclusive and inspirational, not demoralizing. And lastly, we didn't quite really, well, we kind of touched on this, but that being a Black female pioneer was really so much bigger than just my individual success. It opened the doors for the many others who would follow behind. And it continued to raise that platform for them to go further and achieve even higher successes. And I think that's the most wonderful thing about
I agree. I think that is absolutely the take home message, is like that you lived an extraordinary life, but you brought people with you. And that's, we live in a world where a lot of people are very selfishly motivated, and you definitely were not. So I really appreciate your time. I think it's been excellent talking to you. I will put a link to purchase the book in the description. Is there any, do you have like a website where we could have people contact you if they want to?
It's www.gladysdeclouet.com.
Yeah, I'm sure that I do have it. I just didn't
Yeah,
have it
so
right in front of
that's
me.
my website. And on the website, it even has the links to where you can buy the book too, like,
Good.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, whatever. The links are there. And yeah, and that's pretty simple too. You can buy it any place books are sold, really. And definitely every online retailer
Have,
has it.
have you thought about doing some public speaking or some like individual one-on-one coaching?
That is what I am now trying to figure out how to, I'm discovering that it seems to be kind of a, yeah, complicated word. I'm trying to figure out how to best maneuver and do that because I would like to do that. I would like to continue to mentor
You would be an
and
excellent
speak.
coach.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out how to actually get that done, in today's world, it's kind of
Well, I
interesting. So
I feel like you would be such an excellent coach. And I mean, the book obviously is a phenomenal way to mentor lots of people, but I think that you'd be excellent one-on-one with people as well. Off the air, I'll give you some kind of resources that I've, used in as someone who's hired coaches and stuff. I can give you some resources and maybe that'll get you started. Yeah, I feel
yeah,
like
I
there's
would really
probably people
appreciate
listening
that.
right now who are like, man, I would love to talk to her.
Yeah, I really would appreciate if you any resources you can share because right now that is actually what I am, starting to try to figure out how to put together a plan for.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, we'll definitely talk about it off the air. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please leave comments, hit the like button, all those good things that send the beautiful algorithm the message that you enjoy this and you want more of it. Thank you so much to Gladys for being our guest today. You have a very good inspirational story about how you not only persevered, but you brought people with you. And I think that's really cool. Very excited to have you on the show. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, you guys. All right, everybody have a great day and we'll see you on the next show.